you're about to hear are truly the most compassionate, passionate, smart, conscious, determined, committed people you could ever wish to work for, and I feel privileged every day to have them as my friends and to have them as my comrades in arms, because we really are armed, and to really be clarified about purpose.
You're going to hear a lot more about the issues. Our goals here are to close nuclear power plants and to bring about 100% renewable energy, so we do not need any more natural gas, greenhouse gas polluting plants in our environment. You'll hear now in our film a lot more about our SBR3 project.
In Santa Barbara, we all take a lot of care to keep doing what's right for this unique haven. What's right for today is making a sweeping change in the way we supply ourselves with the electrical power we use all day, every day. The World Business Academy has taken on the task of planning our own independent power system using mainly a source of energy that's right here, clean, safe, and economical: the sun, solar energy.
SBR3 stands for Santa Barbara Reliable, Resilient, and Renewable. Right now, Santa Barbara's energy infrastructure is none of those things.
We have incredible amounts of unused solar energy that this community can tap. These are very viable technologies that can be implemented right here and right now.
We have to do it. We absolutely must do that for our children. Whether you believe that we're just running out of fossil fuels or whether you believe that climate change is going to undo civilization, we have to build a different form of energy, and no better place to start than right here in Santa Barbara.
Solar panels on homes, big business rooftops, public buildings, parking structures. It would all make up what's called a microgrid, our own independent power.
To serve the energy needs of the campus, UC San Diego operates a sophisticated microgrid system that supplies nearly 80% of the campus's annual power. Microgrids are small-scale power systems that produce electricity locally. Power comes from renewable energy sources, such as solar panels or wind turbines. A control system uses the electricity generated and stored on site. The system monitors the demand of homes and buildings and responds according to their individual power needs. Microgrids plug into the larger utility grid. In the case of a disruption, such as a power outage, microgrids can disconnect and run independently. This is known as islanding.
The microgrid is essentially a single point of connection into the utility grid, and behind that is the entire campus, our 13 million square feet and 1,200 acres. And what it provides us with is low-cost, high reliable electrical service to the buildings.
The California Energy Commission's Research Development and Demonstration Program has provided over $3 million to the UC San Diego microgrid, and the university has leveraged that funding into over $40 million from federal, industrial, and other sources. The results: a state-of-the-art living laboratory which serves as an educational proof of concept for energy system researchers worldwide. At the heart of the microgrid is a system which allows UC San Diego to control and balance energy demand, supply, and storage in response to energy needs.
One of the big benefits of a microgrid is that it can be used for locations where you need very reliable power.
The microgrid generates energy through its 30 megawatt combined cooling, heating, and power system. Connected to the system are 1.5 megawatts of solar photovoltaic cells, a 2.8 megawatt fuel cell, and a 3.8 million gallon thermal storage tower.
Renewable energy is one of our most favorite ways to approach adding to the resources we have on our microgrid.
Although local low-cost energy production and reliability have been the main appeal of microgrid technology at UC San Diego, researchers also hope that others learn from their example.
The state's energy infrastructure is pretty much at the end of its useful life. We're going to need to replace a lot of power generation.
Aside from the plain common sense of building SBR3, there's another reason it hits a lot closer to home. Transmission towers. There's one long string of them that brings electricity from way down south to Santa Barbara. Many of them are old and in very bad condition. Even the utility itself, Southern California Edison, warns that any number of factors could cause transmission towers to fail, to fall over. If that were to happen, the utility warns, no power.
The infrastructure we have for power in the south central coast is the end of a very long extension cord that's frayed, and we have a vulnerable situation with the transmission lines that serve this area.
There is 220 kilovolt extension cord that comes up from the south, and Santa Barbara and the surrounding communities sit at the end of that cord. Those high voltage extension lines go over the north edge of a mountain range. They are highly vulnerable to catastrophic events, to fires, to dramatic storms such as El Nino. And if they were to become compromised and the towers to fall down, then we could face extended blackouts in this area.
Southern California Edison itself says there is a real risk of an outage that lasts weeks or even longer. Even more unsettling, critical services would also lose power. For how long? Nobody knows. Power outages like this one in January 2015 could be nothing by comparison, just the medical considerations alone. Not all critically ill people are in hospitals, they're often at home, as was Judy Weisbart's 94-year-old mother when the power went out.
My mom was at home. She was on hospice. She was on oxygen 24/7. And when they cut the electricity, it put her in a position where she really did not have mobility, and it gave her stress and fear. And that was not what we wanted for her last few months of life.
We have a massive task in front of ourselves here to try and get as much electricity as we can from the sun, as fast as we can. We have to bring Edison and the Public Utilities Commission around to treating the urgency of this problem with the urgency it deserves. And we're shining a light on it, and people are paying attention.
Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here.
We brought together the Chamber of Commerce, the downtown organization, local political leaders, the Community Environmental Council, as well as business leaders. What really blew me away that night was that such a diverse group of people with varying backgrounds could be unanimous in their support for a local renewable energy system.
We have already 3 power plants on our coast, and it is simply absurd to put a 4th one there when it's subject to sea level rise. There was a meeting of the Public Utilities Commission, and the World Business Academy facilitated a lot of people coming down from Santa Barbara to address the Public Utilities Commission. World business is looking out for the future.
It's nice to come down here and look at these again. They're so cool, just sitting here quietly making electricity all the time.
And when I heard about the microgrid, it was, right, that is the next step. We take responsibility for ourselves, and now we take responsibility for our community.
We use so much electricity beyond our own homes and cars. Let me take a small, simple example from my own life, driving to the grocery store. I go there in my electric car, the Nissan Leaf, check. The electricity for that car is powered by solar panels at my home, good. Of course, I take reusable shopping bags, and when I get to the produce department, I buy mostly what is grown locally and organically. Okay, I know my carbon footprint isn't perfect, but I think I'm doing my part. But then I look around this big store and realize how much electricity it must be using to chill the food, to light everything brightly, to run the air conditioning, the checkout machines, the computer systems. And then I go out from there and think about how much electricity we use all the time in our community. Other kinds of stores, restaurants, coffee shops, schools, hospitals, traffic lights, office buildings, banqueting rooms. So, yes, we need to take care of our own individual responsibility, but we use so much electricity collectively. So, let's go to the next level. Let's take responsibility for the electricity that we use as a community. In Santa Barbara, we can so easily do that. We can take advantage of the beautiful blessing we have of free sunlight and make green power. Instead of relying on fossil fuel burning plants miles and miles away, we can build our own microgrid of electricity, and let's do that. Let's build our own microgrid. It is the most efficient thing to do because the power is right here. It makes us resilient, independent, and it saves money in the long run, because even though it's true that it will cost a lot to set it up, once we do, the fuel is free. As you can tell, I hope, I love the microgrid. I came to the Academy's Luncheon last year for the first time, and since then, I have become more involved with and more excited about the work of the Academy and the microgrid. I have recently had the honor of joining the board of directors, and on behalf of the entire board, I thank all of you for coming here and bringing your own enthusiasm. It's a big, bold project, and it needs all our support. I know a lot of you are already participating through the political process, by spreading the word with donations of all sizes. I hope that many of you will join me today at the $10,000 level. But whatever you can do to help the microgrid become a reality, as someone here recently said to me, you'll be on the right side of history.
There's been hope that nuclear energy would help, but major safety problems, increasing public understanding, and the work of the World Business Academy closed the San Onofre plant.
The closure of San Onofre was just the beginning. There are a number of large, older plants that will be closed down in the next 5 to 10 years, and it's going to leave a vacuum that's going to have to be filled, and it presents a tremendous opportunity to totally redesign how our energy is generated and to bring energy closer to the people that use it.
The Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant would never have been built today. They were aware of some seismic activity, but more and more earthquake faults were discovered as time passed. One of them is within 2,000 feet of the main power block of the reactor. Diablo Canyon sits in an historic tsunami zone, therefore is at risk for a Fukushima-like earthquake, tsunami, and meltdown, which would devastate the Central Coast. The plant should not continue to operate, and we are working with a coalition to try to bring this plant to an end sooner rather than later.
Old ways of thinking and doing business are part of our economic and social life. Governor Brown summed up the battle.
We are here because of oil and gas. That is the prosperity. That's how we got here. That's how your shoe, everything we got has it. So what has been the source of our prosperity now become the source of our ultimate destruction if we don't get off it.
The bar has been set. And we in Santa Barbara believe that we should take a leadership position and should do better than the rest of the state. And really, I think that's our challenge.
We are living now at this revolutionary time where we can more cheaply tap the sun than we can actually drill for fossil fuels and consume them. So let's get on with it. I would argue that the reason we don't is because people tend to get wedded to the world they know, and it's harder for them to switch to an outside-the-box solution, which is the world that's coming.
In Santa Barbara, the World Business Academy has assumed its responsibilities and needs each of you as a full partner to get the work done.
We're making decisions right now that demonstrate our choice, and it's incredibly urgent that we make the right ones.
What Santa Barbara does, California will follow. What California does, the nation and the world will follow. The time is now.
It is the way to solve climate change, and it is the way to lower the cost of our energy dramatically, and most importantly, it's the way to unlock the abundant future that I can see so clearly. We are all familiar, I think, with that quote. People refer to it as an ancient Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. No doubt we would all agree these are interesting times. As you contemplate the film you just saw, and you think of those power towers, those 220 kilovolt lines, and you saw pictures of some of their feet literally hanging in midair in concrete balls, no longer affixed to the mountain they sit on, and you think about the fact that we were warned in 2012 by Edison in a formal filing before the Public Utilities Commission, those towers are coming down. It's not an if, it's a when. And they listed 2 possible reasons they would come down. El Nino, guess what's coming? Or more fires like, and they listed the Gap, Justicia, and a third fire, I forget, and the Tea Fire, thank you. They listed those 3. There's a small fire burning not far away from here today, under control, fortunately, but it's there. So one of the things I wanted to share with you today as you think about how precarious that power structure is. When those wires go down, according to Edison, and they reconfirmed this in 2014 in the document that was on that screen, it might have been hard for you to read, that they were convinced that was going to happen, and when it did, the total power available in Santa Barbara would be 0. Can I repeat that number? 0. For an indeterminate amount of time. At which point they would be scrambling to try to restore emergency power to first responders, EMTs, eventually hospitals, and when they get through, there's going to be at most 1/3 of the existing power today still left for us, for every business and every home in Santa Barbara, which means rolling blackouts where you'll be allowed 2 to 4 hours of electricity per day maximum. Okay, so that's the gravity of the situation. That would be a definition of interesting times. Now, as you will see by sticking with me through this next few minutes, there actually is a happy ending to the story, but it's not an obvious one. For those of you who don't connect the dots well, let me remind you that a couple of weeks ago, the main north-south artery of the state of California, I-5, was closed by a 6-foot wall of mud that came down as a result of a biblical deluge that lasted a little over 3 hours in a state permanently in drought. Interesting times. If you think about it, and I don't know if you read this on the news, 2 days ago, the little town of Chinchilla in Australia, in a 30-minute period, was so pounded by basically basketball-sized pieces of hail that the roofs of many buildings in town were destroyed, schools were closed, and what was left on the ground looked like a snowfall, except it disappeared within a few hours. Interesting times. We are currently in the warmest 12-month period, right now, take the last 12 months, warmest 12-month period since we began keeping records in 1895. No records before that. Interesting times. We know that South Carolina, with a very Republican governor, has resisted infrastructure repairs until just recently, when 97 dams and bridges were destroyed by a sudden storm that she called a 1,000-year flood. No, ma'am. Sorry, Governor Haley. That's the new normal, because these are interesting times. And of course, this is the one that I like the best. We are in the 328th consecutive month now of temperatures above the 20th century average. That's an interesting time. Now, I don't want to keep going on and on because I think everybody in this room knows about climate change. But what I do want to say is that because we are a generous people here in this room, we support the homeless in Santa Barbara. We support the idea of helping people in faraway countries, in India, China, children in Africa that need to be educated. We're generous, generous people, sometimes with world scope charities, sometimes with ones right here at home. How is that generosity of ours connected to these interesting times? What I'd like to share with you is what Pope Francis shared. The most disproportionate impact that occurs from climate change is on the poorest of the poor. If you think it's bad in Santa Barbara with no power, can you imagine what it's been like to live for the last 2,000 years in India in a village with no power? Or in Rwanda with no power? And by the way, both countries have contacted the World Business Academy and said, please help us know how to build microgrids like you're designing for Santa Barbara. We want to build microgrids in Africa and India. They don't have our technical sophistication, they don't have our financial capability, they don't have our educational levels, but they understand that if the power's ever going to get to the village to close the technological divide, we absolutely have got to be able to let every village access the satellite, and it will never happen if they're waiting for the wire to get there. The wire will not arrive. As long as we thought it took a copper wire to get a phone call, which is what we fought since the 1880s in New York, that's how it started. 23% of the population had a phone. When we realized waiting for the wire was the problem, and we went to cell phones, 90% of the population had a phone. The same statistics hold true in power. If you wait for that power line to get to you, two problems. One, it's not coming if you live in India, Africa, Asia. It's never going to get there. And number two, if it does, it could be one like ours, which is going to get turned off. And is that day when that wire falls that Edison's predicting with certainty, is that going to be today, tomorrow? We don't know which day. We just know it's a day. So when do you want to prepare for that day? And I'm really glad that Carmen Ramirez is here. She walked up and said hi a minute ago. I wanted to thank her for coming. So she's the mayor pro temp of Oxnard. She's what Pope Francis is talking about. They want to put a ridiculous set of power plants on her beach in Oxnard to burn more fossil fuels, to send 150 megawatts of that power up to Santa Barbara over the same lines that they say won't stand. That's a social justice issue. It's also bad economics, it's foolish electrical policy, and frankly, at the end of the day, it's a cause for a scandal. I wanted to share with you that if you don't know, the Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist of the New York Times, multiple best-selling author, Thomas Friedman documented that the war in Syria started because of a climate change issue. For those of you who don't know, it started because of a drought. The farmers took up weapons, they started shooting at Assad's soldiers. The next thing, a battle started to break out, and Al-Qaeda initially, and then ISIS saw the vacuum, jumped in, and that's how you got ISIS to this day, climate change. Most people don't know that story. It's true. So if you want to help ourselves with wars in the Middle East, with social injustice in Oxnard, California, with how to get the digital divide to start closing for the villages in India, Africa, and Asia, if you want to do all of those things, and you want to keep the lights on in Santa Barbara, remember, these are interesting times, and it requires all of us to be interesting people and to commit together, this is what we will do. You know, I want to thank our elected officials that are here today. I'm particularly pleased because Senator Hannah Beth Jackson recently requested that the president of Edison, Pedro Pizarro, meet with her and the World Business Academy on this emergency issue. And I know that Salud, who apparently is not here now but was scheduled to come, Doss Williams has joined that request, as has Greg Hart from the city of Santa Barbara. We want to have a, thank you. The purpose of that meeting is to bring this level of urgency to the CEO of Southern California Edison. Now, I'm going to see him in about a week at a cocktail party, and I'm glad I got invited, because it's nice to say nice things. But at the end of the day, I'd rather go to the meeting with Hannah Beth. You know, what I want to do is I want to talk about the urgency of this issue. I want to talk about the social justice of this issue. I want to talk about, and this is the most important thing, do you folks realize the microgrid we have proposed, and nobody now technically in the state of California tells us we can't do it. They tell us it's ambitious, but they don't tell us again. As recently as 10 days ago, the chairman's assistant of the Public Utility Commission looked me in the eye and said, you know, if there's a place to do it, maybe we ought to start in Santa Barbara. You're probably right. Now, when you combine the fact that we are capable, when I proposed a microgrid 2 years ago, when we did that, nobody thought it was possible. And certainly not with 100% renewable energy. We now know with certainty, it's not only possible, it makes more sense. And just to beg to disagree with one thing that Diane Boss said, the $1 billion it would cost or more here is less than 1 year's operating cost of Diablo Canyon. Think about it. We could trade cancer for lights working. The money's there. You're paying it in your bills. We spend a few $1,000,000 here to make this happen, and I got to tell you, it leverages into $1 billion or more worth of state and federal money that's waiting to find the solution. And this is how I come back to that mudslide. And this is how I come back to Australia. And this is how I come back to all these interesting times. You see, the microgrid solution we proposed for one reason. We knew if we did it here in Santa Barbara, it will replicate globally, it will end climate change. Okay? As my dear friend John Steed, who's in the room today, said to me, we must stop putting more greenhouse gases in the air as the very first step. Then we can worry about repairing the damage. He's absolutely correct. And the way to do that is with a 100% renewable microgrid. It's technically possible, it's financially wise, it will create enormous numbers of jobs locally, and it will be the shining light that the rest of the world would avidly want to copy. I literally got a message from Prime Minister Modi's office requesting our help in India. I've had a request from the Senior Energy Advisor of Paul Kagame in Rwanda. Could you please help us build them? So people want us to do this, and we have the ability here. So this is that really rare serendipitous opportunity where the crisis here in Santa Barbara, and it's real, forces us to do what's smart for us. Think of all the Judy Weisbart's mothers who live or die based on electricity, keeping their heart-lung machines operating, their oxygen machines running. Think of all the people in our emergency rooms. Okay? These are the people we cannot forget. These are our neighbors. These are we. And what we need to do is recognize that by solving this problem, we are solving the most fundamental challenge of the time we live in. We're solving the challenge of climate change, so that we do not have to have any more chinchilla Australias and no more 6-foot walls of mud on I-5. I'd like to end with two final thoughts. One, I started the talk by talking about times, interesting times. Just another quote about times, Bob Dylan's quote. And the quote goes like this: the times, they are a-changin'. A challenge you've heard today is how we are going to come out with that challenge. How will we change those times? I believe that what we're going to do in this room and what we've been doing in this organization, the World Business Academy, what we've been doing with our neighbors in Santa Barbara is to accelerate the change which must occur, because the times, they are a-changing, and we, the people in this room, we choose to change them for the better. We choose a solution over continuing crisis, and most importantly, we choose solutions for ourselves and other people rather than allowing the times to cause us to feel numb because we think, what can we do? We're so insignificant in the face of global climate change. Well, now you know the answer. We can fix it. That's pretty empowering. How do we go about it? Well, it's very simply this. When President Kennedy asked Wernher von Braun, what does it take? What does it take to get a man to the moon and back safely in 10 years or less? Von Braun reported to him an answer that will live in the annals of history. It was a 5-word answer. It applies today. He said, Mr. President, all that it takes to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely in a decade is the will to do it. 5 words. That's what this room is all about. And so now we have the opportunity today to invoke collectively that will. I'm delighted that I know you share it with me. Thank you.